Doesn't seem to cover this aspect. Okay.
So your question is, your observation of the research, it doesn't cover the aspect that men can compartmentalize their empathy for a temporary period of time.
They can express it in different ways. There's different ways empathy shows itself. That little boy jumping on his sister, that's all you know.
Hello. So, yeah, there's two themes to your question. One is the compartmentalization of emotion, and lots of studies like stress injury and similar conditions have found that when it comes to stressful incidents and incidents of high emotion, men are much better at putting it in a box, burying it and forgetting about it, which is why there's lots of issues in reporting rates for victimization against men, be it sexual violence or domestic violence, because they deal with the stress, have the emotion, put it away, which does play into, as you said, with combat, how they take their empathy and realise that they've got this emotional responsiveness and then shut it away. But in these tests, that sort of does avoid that, in the sense that they give them scenarios and ask them to ask how they'd respond, which does fall prey to the fact of self-reporting and understanding one's own emotions, which for men do seem to have issues with understanding one's own emotions, as it's been called. Normal male alexithymia is the term for it. The inhibited emotional vocabulary that men seem to suffer from. There's a huge variety of reasons for it. I'm not going to go into the history of it now, but that is one part that does play in, and you are right there. The other theme you mentioned was about the different forms of empathy, and again, you are completely right, that you have cognitive empathy, which is, say, for example, I can look at someone who's crying and think, you're crying because you're sad. I know what it's like to be sad. I might not necessarily feel sad when I see you crying, but I know that you're sad, which is why I'm crying. That's a cognitive empathy. Or I could look at someone who's crying and feel sad as well and emotionally respond to it. And then there's compassion, which is when I then act on it. And so, to a certain degree, the studies do cater to that by asking how they would respond. So it does play to cognitive empathy, but then also ask for their emotional responsiveness, which does play, again, to affective empathy. But, yeah, it is held back or inhibited by the fact that men do seem to compartmentalize. So you are right to suggest that perhaps these studies do ignore that. The issue is trying to find a methodology that can dodge that issue, which is a problem. So unfortunately, it is difficult to figure out.
They don't seem to quantify it properly. That's what I'm thinking of.
Some early studies have, yes. That's the issue.
Hi, I'm Andrew. This is a question for Steve. I was interested when you said that. Hi. I was interested when you said that the way that men interact with women is not essentially competitive because of the biological rates of why men compete with men, etc. And I just noticed in my interactions with women over the decades that I think because of the influence of feminism, that the women I meet are becoming more and more competitive with each other, with me, with other men. So do you think this is just a blip? Because obviously you're interested in like these long time periods of evolution. But what's going on, with this kind of, what I see as kind of masculinization of women, that it seems to be reflected in quite competitive behaviour towards men?
Can you summarise the question first?
Oh, good Lord. I've had 4 pints of beer, I'm not sure I can. No, I think what we're saying is that what I've argued is that competitiveness is intra-sexual within sex, i.e. male and female, but under the influence of feminism, there seems to be female-on-male competitiveness, which wouldn't have been there before. Is that an accurate summation? Yeah. Well, there's no reason why you can't have aberrations whereby some extreme, ridiculous ideology, as we have now, pertains for a little while, but I think we all agree it's going to be very, very short-lived. But there is a more complicated thing than that. Basically, there's a chapter in my new book, Sex I've Explained, about this apparent cross-sex competitiveness, which is a chimera. It doesn't actually exist. What's happening when males are in female company, right? It seems as though males are competing with females. They're not. They're competing with each other or competing against their own past performance in order to demonstrate their relative dominance, their ranking vis-a-vis other males, because that's obviously a ploy in the mating game, right? Females, on the other hand, actually back away from competitiveness in male presence, because competitiveness does not in any way signal female mate value. So they actually back away. Old studies, which you cannot find on the internet anymore, because like feminists or somebody's buried them, they used to look at female netball teams in school, and all the girls used to suddenly freeze on the sight of any males nearby. Oh, I'm not doing this. I'm actually dainty, sort of thing. That sort of now. Those sort of things can be obviously affected by a culture, as you quite rightly say. The imposition of a feminist ideology can, in various surface ways, but only surface ways, can quite radically apparently change behaviour, but it's not long for this world.
Just quickly, it doesn't seem a lot of questioners. Can I just pop a quick trivial one in towards the doctor? Are you cutting down on the honey jack, or is it still, a huge feature of your life?
Okay, this has become an ordeal. Multi-topic. No. Look, I should point out. Eventually, you'll find an alcohol that gets you very drunk but doesn't give you hangovers. But that doesn't mean you have a way out. It means you're destroying your liver without destroying your brain, and that's not necessarily a good thing. Because destroying your liver takes 2 years before you notice when you start sleeping more than you expect to and stuff. So honey jack is gorgeous, folks, but don't abuse it, because it will abuse you. Is that sufficient? Just like women, yeah. All right.
Hi, Chloe again. Sorry, I'm short. I've got a question for kind of everyone. So, obviously, it's possible to get men interested in men's issues by appealing to self-interest, if nothing else.
Sort of.
But considering the issues with empathy that we've seen, I mean, we do have girls here. And people have talked about how that's important, but what is it that gets some women interested, and how do I convert my friends?
Where's Elizabeth? So the question is for the camera. How can we get more women interested in men's rights and anti-feminism? Yeah. And how can we appeal to their self-interest? And how can I convert my friends who are female? Yeah? I'll start, because this is something I'm extremely interested in. I find that it does depend on the woman, but I am this experiment called Women Against Feminism with over 10,000 people, a Facebook group, and the Liberty Bells, which we've kind of been working on. Our goal is to appeal to women. Because we think that more women need to get involved, and we think that, like Neil, we agree that women kind of need to lead the way, at least in rejecting feminism. Men's rights is overlapped. It's not all about feminism, but I think that the way to do that is to appeal to some rational self-interest. I don't actually think that it's a bad thing to do that by pointing out how feminism hurts women too, and also how feminism hurts the men in their lives. And I think one of the best places to find this is the Accused.me Facebook group and forum. You have constant floods of women saying, my husband, my brother, my dad has been falsely accused of a sexual assault, and now they're going through this CPS hell. And you will find that it will be the women in their lives that are rallying round trying to get a GoFundMe going to help them or find out more information, more so than the men. So, I think with more of that kind of thing happening, that we can appeal to the harm that it's doing to their people in their personal lives. So with that, I will pass it on to the next person. You want to go next, Swain?
That's a really interesting question, because when I was working for Fathers for Justice up on the roofs there, we used to have benches downstairs selling wristbands, etc., etc. And we used to notice that there was more women coming along asking questions than men. It was men who had lost their custody of their children, not just custody, but contact with their children. The sisters were coming along, making a fuss about it. How can we join? How can we help? It was the paternal grandmother that was coming along, saying, how can we help? What can we do? It was the new girlfriends that were coming along, and it was the new wives that were coming along, and men just didn't really give a shit. I don't know what is the matter with men. We couldn't understand why we didn't get more men in the Bristol group, but we got a lot of women really interested in what we were doing. So does that answer your question? And I don't know why. Because of probably the relationship and the intimate area of what they were dealing with their menfolk.
So my experience is obviously limited in this, but I don't think it's that women aren't engaged in this idea, because we know, for example, that only 7% of women identify as feminists, and yet the majority do recognise equality as an idea. So I think most women are awake to these ideas, but something about the existing culture of feminism won't let them betray it. I mean, we know every time in the mainstream when we see a prominent person deny feminism, they're completely extradited from, the cult, if you like. So I think it's not a problem with our culture, it's a problem with their culture, demonizing those that are willing to leave it.
Okay, how to get more women interested in men's rights? Well, I mean, you just have to appeal to, well, what do women want? And the best thing you can do with that is to appeal to their reproductive instinct. So, I think Warren Farrell, he said a very long time ago, stop calling these men's issues and start calling them men and boys' issues. Women have sons, they have brothers, but more importantly, a place on the son part, because then that's the interest. That's one thing we can do, but most importantly, if you really want to get women's reproductive interest in this to begin with, why don't we start supporting the MGTOW movement? And my reasoning for that is that a lot of women have already come into it because of the MGTOW movement. They're terrified that a lot of men just don't think that it's worth it anymore. And it's one of the things we have to understand is men compete with men, women compete with other women, but they compete in a way that most men don't have a fucking clue how women compete with one another. Not a fucking clue. But they are still competing. So if a large enough percentage of the men just walk away, well, that does work. And essentially, here's a few golden rules. Stop fucking crazy women. That's a general rule. And when it comes to women with really ugly personalities, really ugly views, make the point out to them that they are hideous. Point out all their individual flaws, all that, and that, surprisingly, you'd be surprised how effective it is, not to men, but to other women.
Well, I'm coming at this from, I guess, artistic comedy type point of view, but I mean, this might be anathema to say here, but I'm more akin to say be anti-feminist and less men's rights. I know that sounds a little weird, but the thing with particularly being a white male is in the politically correct. No, it's true. I mean, the truth is that we are victims, and yet what kind of gives us a leg up is if we have that kind of. If we avoid the language of anything reeking of victimhood, I think that gives us some kind of leg up. And I took a lot of heart with what was it Dr. Belinda said earlier, that eventually this nihilism is going to cancel itself out. And I just want to have my cakes before the whole shithouse goes up in flames. The Jim Morrison quote. But it really, I just think we need to be irreverent and fun. I think it's most important. I think we need to move away from the academic side, because sometimes we just tend to talk to ourselves about these things. But we need to go out there and be irreverent. So when so-and-so comes forward with a brave, groping story, we need to mock it. We need to start mocking and rocking and rolling again. I mean, I know it sounds a little bit vague, but just we need to be fun and irreverent. Otherwise, it just gets too academic, and nobody takes this seriously. And when it becomes another rights issue, it's like, okay, put us in line with women's rights and Islamic rights, and it just becomes the same. But just be anti. I say this is the age for anti. Cheers.
The problem is it's criminalised and it's now a hate crime. You can't mock someone
If you do it in numbers, you can. And if there weren't so many pussies working in comedy, we could fucking mock the fuck out of this. So I don't
Absolutely right.
So, how to get more women into this movement? Well, not even that will do it, because at the end of the day, we're quite a... I think a more expansive question would be how to get more people into the movement, because I mean I have seen year on year of each of the International Men's Day events and lectures and debates in universities and the ICMIs, more people turning up and getting involved. But to specifically answer your question about how to get more women in, speaking from personal experience, there's sort of like 3 avenues we can go about, and they've all sort of been touched on already. Do I need to be quick? Oh, bugger. Okay, I volunteer for Families Need Fathers, Both Parents Matters Cymru, and paternal grandmothers are one of the most strongest voices that we have. Grandmothers who have lost their grandchildren, my God alive, will they kick up a fuss. Oh my God. And I'm thinking of one woman right now who took the EHRC to external council review just to force them to change their practices. I won't go into it. The story will go live on Monday. But yeah, she kicked up a huge fuss of the EHRC over men's rights. 2, appeal to them as humans. Understand what women want, what women like, what seems to work. One thing that really does work with this movement are memes and comedy and that sort of thing, and also appealing to what is the inherent female nature, sort of like empathic arguments. There's no point throwing cold statistics at her because, yeah, she'll listen to them. But, I mean, honestly, even I'm a dude, I'm partially autistic. You throw cold statistics at me, sometimes I'm just going to go, fuck off. Because there's no story behind it. You can't understand it. And the third route is with love and openness. All my previous partners have had to go through the thick and thin of the stuff that I do because I live this. This is what I do. I don't do anything else. And so they have to face me being involved in this movement. And I pull them in through love and affection, them being my partner. And they get involved. They care. They realise that actually genital mutilation is illegal and it's wrong to do to children. So, yeah. Sorry.
I don't think it's actually a big problem. Look at the number of women here tonight, and I'd like to thank every single woman who's here tonight. Yeah. Fantastic you coming here, every single one of you. I don't think it's a problem. I think women generally, somebody's put out a statistic, only 7% of women are into feminism. So women are fiercely intersectionally competitive, and they will want to fuck feminism. So it's great. And it's great, particularly having Natoya and Elizabeth organise events. Women organising these events helps as well.
What do you think about the second assault on you, about the fact you're not allowed to name your accuser in public?
I think there should be a sex accusers register. You know, if you're going to have a register for sex offenders, you should have one for sex accusers. Mike?
I completely agree. But at the end of the day, feminists frame these laws. And Alison Saunders, you know, we are not in a war with feminists. Feminists won the war 20 or 30 years ago. All we're seeing is the consequences of it. And we, and by we, us, say men and women, we need to start a new gender war, quite frankly. Because, you know, there's not going to be an easy, intellectual, calm way through this. Men have been crapped on too long, and they need to stand up and fight for themselves.
Next question, please.
Okay, hi. My name's Alistair Grove. I'm from Goodmays. This is a bit of a strange question, so to anyone who wants to answer it, it's also related to a couple of the previous questions. I've come to the belief that one of the main problems in today's society is that women were not denied, but socially rebuffed from their natural role as the moral arbiters of society by being denied to the priesthood. And therefore, maybe a way to rectify that or to make an official kind of woman's priesthood that argues the rules of society about when it comes to morality. Would that be a good a way to rectify the current moral crisis of our society at the moment?
Okay, so your question is, women have been removed from their role as moral arbiters of society and arbiters. Sorry, I did a BA in culture studies. I'm a retard. Sorry. All right. Bloody hell. Okay, sorry. Can I answer the question? I was summarising the question for the camera. Should we try and instigate some kind of female priesthood? Can I answer this question? This is something that we have discussed quite recently in Women Against Feminism group. One of the main things that we've been promoting is something called, Elizabeth said this quote, she said that we should rein in our crazy sisters. And basically it used to be women's social role to keep other women's morality in line. All the slut shaming in the past was done by women against women. I'm not saying that slut shaming is necessarily a good thing, I'm just giving you an example. And I have noticed that with female friendship I had in the past, if I spoke out against something I thought was that my friend was doing that was pretty immoral, I was not held with other females. They didn't sort of support me in a way that I thought they would. They often would say, I should just leave her alone, or, I was being too harsh, or something like that. So in my experience, we have had that reduced, and I think that we should start encouraging it again, and I have personally been doing that with the work that I do online. So if you're thinking about something more official, if you come up with a good concept, it could be like then I'm all ears.
I'll talk to you later.
Okay, let's move on to the next question.
For anyone who wants to answer, from the inside, what can family lawyers do to help with the family court? Because I'm not even sure where to start.
From the inside, what can family lawyers do to help with family court situations? Jordan.
Well, it depends entirely upon what your situation is. I'm not going to profess to be some sort of genius of the family law, because I don't think such a thing can exist, considering how neurotic and insane the family courts are, having heard the cases of some people and the complete shit they've been through. But the advice that family law lawyers can give, in terms of, who's the advice going to?
Just in general, how can we help? If we can help.
Oh, if you want to help, okay, if you want to help, join FNF. If you want to get involved, join FNF, no question. I go every month to the Cardiff branch, and the best I can offer is what I've learnt about the system as I've been going these past months, and my experiences having gone through it as a child, and what I saw and what worked for me and the family. That's all I can offer. But to quote Will, the number one piece of advice I can give is don't give up. The worst thing you can do, this is what we always tell them, to all the dads who come through, don't give up. Because so many come through and they want to top themselves. Because the shit they're going through, they don't have a reason to smile. They don't, to quote you, they don't have their wife and family. They don't have the responsibility. And I say to them, a struggling dad is better than a dead dad.
Very, very quickly to your answer, what we can do about family lawyers, mass suicide.
Next question, please.
My question is written down on a piece of paper. It's been
Do you want me to read it out?
Yeah, that'd be.
Which one is it?
It's just that.
The whole thing. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yesterday, the Feminist Futures Conference was held by the Fawcett Society, declaring on their evidently expensive website that the future is bright, the future is feminist. They invited attendees to their suspiciously timed event with a chance to witness her story in the making. Among those speaking were, in no particular order of importance, the President of the National Union of Students, a representative from the Mayor of London's office, and Caroline Millen, the head of the safety policy programs at Facebook. My question is this: with events like that outnumbering events like this, literally hundreds to one, how do we turn ourselves into a threat to what Erin Pizzey calls the evil empire? Well done. Well done. Good question. Who wants to answer? Oh.
The question, as I understood it, was you were really funny. When are you playing again? And the answer is the 11th of December at Leicester Square Theatre. I forgot to mention that. 11th of December, Leicester Square Theatre, one-man show, and let's rock and roll.
Okay. I wanted to correct your question. Your question asks how. No, so sorry. No, your question asks how do we become a threat? The implication of that statement being we're not already a threat. My experience is we are a massive thorn in their backside. Even though we're small, the fact that we are kicking up a fuss on social media and what I'm seeing in the family courts with F&F, they hate us. They know that we're winning. They know our arguments are right, and they know that we're growing. They know that we will eventually do something big enough to cause them serious concern. We're not there yet, but we already are a threat. Well, I don't know what else to say, really. Just we are here.
Yeah, this is a little bit of an extension into what I said before, but if you want, I mean, as Jordan says, we are already a threat. How do we become more of a threat? Well, adopt these sorts of the same weapon feminism did, Swain said in his speech. They were most successful when they targeted schools, or when they targeted the future. If you can target children, and particularly reproduction, and we can use everybody, all individuals have a sense of power, and that power is to choose who they decide to mate with, so to speak. Well, if we keep doing that, because we are growing exponentially, there's just a fact. The more and more feminists in society keep shitting on men, that's going to breed more and more little boys that grow up and realise society doesn't give a fuck about them. Keep doing that, and sooner or later we will see exponential growth, and they will not be able to ignore us.
Next question, please. Oh, hello, Nigel.
Hello, sorry. This is actually directed at Will, because obviously, for me, if you open the doors with the NUS and you get a men's sort of forum together, isn't that going to open the doors for the rest of men across the law itself to get their equality back? And do you think you'll actually be successful with that in mind? Because clearly if you open that door, everybody's going to start looking inwards to every other society going around the world and the country.
Okay, so the question to Will Stiles is, if you succeed in your campaign to get men's forums through the NUS, then do you think that will open the door to other things?
Yes, absolutely. This was always intended as a precedent, because as I said, it would be the first of its kind in the UK, but that's because I don't trust my own research. My own research says it would be the first in the world. But you know, I've Googled, you know. Yes, it will open the doors, and absolutely, as it should, the floodgates will come flooding. Every university across the country will start saying, hang on, what about my students' union? And then suddenly we'll start saying, hang on, what about the NUS, which, by the way, currently has a law for its NUS delegates conference, which forbids a male majority. You must have a minimum of 50% self-identified female representatives from your university go to NUS. But I think that will definitely change if this gets approved, or rather, when.
Next question, please.
This is more of an observation than a question, but I want to see what the panel think of it. Men cooperate in ways that look like competition, and women compete in ways that look like cooperation. What do you think of that?
So men cooperate in ways that look like competition, and women cooperate in ways that look like cooperation. What do you think of that?
Yeah, women compete.
Who wants to answer?
Have you never been cockblocked?
Mark or Mike? Brampton McCann? Someone who hasn't spoken.
Competition is cooperation. I know it looks like they're sort of opposites in a way, but like I said in my speech, when men figure out how to compete with each other in a way that's productive, such as sport or technology or science or whatever. I know science isn't competitive, but in a way, anything that men do is competitive. Like, when men have a sense of individuality combined with a sense of collectivism, like how do I make things better for the collective, they're very good at that. And I know we often speak of like individuality as better than collectivism, and it is, because it's what we're missing, you know, ideally in today's society. But you can't have one without the other, because we're a social species. That's kind of our special our special ability as a species. We're incredibly social, even as far as primates go. So the ability to do that is sort of unique, as well as our ability to see ourselves as individuals. So competitiveness is cooperation. You get me? All right, sorry.
Yeah, males obviously are both cooperative and a dominance hierarchy, which we know now is male specific. That's obviously competitive, but you have to be cooperative to agree to actually take part in the dominance hierarchy in the first place. Obviously, that's inbuilt. It's not something you consciously decide. Male in-grouping it stems from ancestrally when males identify with the entire natal group. So that now, male sense of in-group automatically extends to the work group, their university year group, or whatever. Female social structure is completely different. It's a core of twosomes and threesomes, which extends by clustering and chains. And it's the reason that is so is because females need to prepare themselves for when they leave the community, because we're a female exogamous species, to become married. And then amongst a sea of unknown females, they need to form close bonds with their females for mutual child care. This is why girls behave in the way they do, and how it contrasts with women. So both sexes are both cooperative and competitive. And with biology, the underlying principle in biology is cooperation. This is what left get wrong and upside down. The surface is competition, but underneath it's always cooperation.
Hi, okay, so amongst a lot of the BBC watching morons who make up a large proportion of the British public, obviously not you guys, I'd say there seems to be a divide occurring, which is that women are becoming more, they're embracing their victimhood status more, they're clambering for more and more victimhood pie, whereas men, it seems, are becoming more and more stoic, in ridiculous situations where it clearly doesn't work. Would you guys say this is the case? Yeah, that's my question.
So your observation is that men are becoming more stoic and women are becoming more...
Men are becoming more stoic, but in situations where stoicism doesn't work, whereas women are just clambering for victimhood pie, even though it's becoming kind of dysfunctional.
Okay. Who wants... Adam, do you want to answer?
It's not relevant at all.
Okay. Mike?
Yeah. I happen to think that stoicism is one of the most remarkable male qualities. And the idea that the male suicide rate would come down if men talk more is complete bullshit. Complete bullshit. The only thing that is stopping the male suicide rate being many times what it is stoicism. And but unfortunately, what I think is very commendable at the individual level is absolutely toxic at the class level. And feminism, it wins every bloody battle it takes on. It's not because it breaks doors down. All those bloody doors are open. Every time. Another problem, but okay.
No, I was just going to say, I've heard so many of the platitudes. I think it's all propelled by platitudes, and this whole, the mantra of we need more women in comedy, we need more women doing this, and I know that firsthand with the BBC. If you're not doing anything that promotes diversity, or I'm some chav out in East London who have some Muslims and move in next door, but in the end I'm the problem. It's the same fucking mantra, and the only advice I can give is don't fucking pay the TV license. Don't just stop it, defund it, and sorry, I just want to say, I was thinking the other day, there was who was the cricketer? There was a cricketer that was interviewed by a female sports journalist. When I grew up, it was still like men doing the sports, right? But there was a cricketer. Was it a cricketer? Yeah. And what did he say? It was something like, "Oh, you're a cute little thing," or something. "Oh, you look beautiful." You just get done doing this really masculine thing. I don't play sports. He does this masculine thing. He comes off the field. The first person he sees is this hot-looking chick, and this instinctual thing comes out, and that's it. I apologize. Oh, fuck that noise.
I just wanted to briefly pick up on what Mike was saying, and he's absolutely right about the whole stoicism thing and how people, the mantra, the argument is if men spoke about their feelings, they'd be killing themselves less. And I call complete bullshit on the grounds that women talk about their feelings, yet they attempt suicide 33% more often than men do. So it's clearly not fucking working for them, is it?
Okay. Well, I think one of the main reasons for that is that, well, again, men and women are under a different kind of selection pressures. And again, it comes back to men and women compete differently. If you want to know the difference of that, if you want to see how men compete, watch Saving Private Ryan. If you want to see how women compete with one another, watch the movie Mean Girls.
Can
I have your question?
Hi, my name is Arnold, and my question would be...
Did you write it down?
No, I just want to get names.
Oh, okay. Go on.
As you mentioned that you're planning private prosecution of Joseph Spitzer. That's right. Would that be option with Dr. Baltinda Meher as well? As you mentioned that police and Crown Prosecution Service refused to prosecute him. Is there an option to do private prosecution in this case? And as well, again, I'm not sure is that option in UK, but let's say in the United States there is option for civil suit. So sue them civilly.
Can you summarise the question, Mike?
Yes, I think the question is, could I or somebody else take out a private prosecution of Dr. Balvinda Mehat? The answer is yes, but the way that, but the way, and I would happily do that, but the CPS could take over that prosecution and drop it. And the question is, at what point does the mainstream media start to take attention of this? It's already doing it. There's a very good journalist at the BBC who's covering it. It always seems to be female journalists that cover this stuff. But there are some good journalists out there, and it's slowly entering the public understanding. We've now protested at the last 3 Conservative conferences, and I can tell you each time there's been, the public's understanding that it's illegal has just shot up each time. It's really quite amazing to see.
Just want to know how you think this is all going to end. Is feminism going to die, men going to walk away, society collapse, or whatever?
Oh, I think Adam wants to answer that, doesn't he? Yes, I know. Go on.
10 seconds. Right. Yes. The answer to that question: all of the above.
The feminists will finally get to control that they'll be controlled. The Ummah, they'll get to wear the burqa, which is what they really want. That's why Sadiq Khan takes away the adverts on the tubes, so nobody's feelings will get hurt, and that way we can never look at a woman in a bikini again. And it'll be complete fucking nihilism, and just get your kicks before the whole shit goes up in flames. And to that effect, the 11th of December, one-man show, politically incorrect, Leicester Square Theatre.
The answer to the question, I'm going to be as quick as I can, is it depends how pessimistic and optimistic you are. Feminism is socialism in a dress. Let's not hide that. It's Marxism specifically in a dress, how they've switched bourgeoisie and proletariat into male and female. And if we look at the history of any Marxist or socialist country and what's happened to them, I think we can imagine a similar sort of thing happening to gender relations unless if we put a stop to it. That's done.
Okay, guys, we are now finished. Thank you so much for coming. Please give everyone a hand.